I work in a hospital call center. It's not great work, but it pays the bills. Though you may not think it, you get a lot of calls during the 8-hour shift you work. Usually it's just people trying to find a relative who might be in there, someone trying to schedule an appointment in surgery, maybe even someone seeking medical advice. I'm apparently not qualified to do any of those things, so the job became a lot of telling people, "One moment please while I transfer you." Then you send them off to their desired department, or not, and you get to talk to them again, except less polite this time. You get a lot of angry people too, most looking for billing, or maybe because they got charged for a hospital service they didn't receive. Those people are best sent off as quickly as possible, before they can get a good head of steam going. There are 4 to 6 of us in the department at any given time. It's mostly college kids trying to pay their bills, or older people looking for a little extra on top of their social security. All in all, I think around 10 of us work the switchboard, and you get to know your coworkers pretty well, especially when there's so few of you. We also take turns working the midnight shift, most of us working the day or the mid shift primarily, and at the end of the month, we all walk away with a nice chunk of overtime for our troubles. People being people, there's always 12 or 16 hours of overtime a month. No one minds much, the job's pretty easy, and I liked having a job where I could finish my schoolwork or play on my phone for 8 to 16 hours and still get paid. That was before the heavy breather. Not a week went by where he didn't get at least one notation in the logbook. The notations were supposed to be for strange or unusual calls. For the last few months, most of the entries have been a heavy breather. We had named the caller because their calls were all pretty much the same. You'd pick up the phone and hear the telltale heavy breathing on the other end and know what was going on. We all just figured it was some pervert, some lonely sicko trying to get his rocks off to someone on the other end. You'd hang up before he could get his satisfaction and make a note of it in the logbook. I say these things like they were regular occurrences, but in truth I had yet to get the mystery caller. Every other operator had gotten him at least twice, some of them 3 or 4 times, but I had never managed to see what all the fuss was about. I would get my wish a couple of days later, though. 3 days of midnights? My boss just shrugged at me as she sank the pushpin into the bulletin board. She posted our schedules by hand every week, despite the rest of the hospital having access to an electronic payroll system which generated the schedule for them. Martha is old school, though. Probably since she's been here since they pulled her out of the foundation when they broke ground. She's one of the best bosses I've ever had, too. She doesn't like how short-handed we are any more than we do. "Sorry, kid. Roger says he's taking the weekend off to go visit his boyfriend. He's always doing this on such short notice. I swear I'd have fired him on the spot if we weren't so short-handed. Still, all 3 nights? You're the only one with an open schedule, kid. I'll give you next weekend off if you want it. Scout's honor." Martha made the promise so freely that I took her up on it in a heartbeat. A promise from Martha was worth its weight in gold. She couldn't possibly have known that this would likely be the last weekend I'd ever sit behind that desk. Friday night went pretty normally. I arrived at 11 p.m., brewed a thermos of coffee, and got to my desk around 11:15. Jordan and Aiden were there, finishing up their calls and cleaning up their stations as they waited for midnight. We chatted a little as I logged on, discussing call volume and talking about tonight's call-in schedule. Apparently, there was a team I needed to call in at 4 a.m. for a 5 a.m. case. And they added that the heavy breather had been calling a lot today. They don't say anything, they just keep calling about once an hour, like they're looking for someone. Pam swears she heard them say a name before they hung up, but Pam likes to make stuff up for attention. I got a little excited when Jordan told me that. If they were calling more often, then maybe I'd get to talk to them. I know it's weird to hope that a crazy person will call up and breathe on the phone, but I really wanted to experience it. I felt like it would make me like everyone else, and I was a little sore that I hadn't gotten him yet. I would get my wish about an hour later. It was about 12:30 when they called. I was sitting in the call center basement, sipping coffee and checking Reddit on my phone, when I heard the computer chirp and inform me that I had a call. It was from an unlisted number, not that uncommon, so I picked it up without thinking much about it. When I picked it up, it sounded like someone was sitting too close to a fan. The blowing was annoying, but I was a professional, and I tried to power through it. "Southwest Medical Center, how may I help you?" The noise on the other end sounded different slightly. I realized all at once that it was rain coming down hard on a window somewhere. Was it raining outside? It hadn't been when I came in. There hadn't been a cloud in the sky, actually. The rain covered it slightly, but as I sat in silence, I began to hear the deep breathing on the other end. There he was. There was the weird caller. "Hello, Southwest Medical, can I help you?" The breathing persisted, overtopped by the rain that hit hard on the window of wherever they were. I reached for the book to start scribbling down the usual message when I heard something over the phone. I heard a voice. "Sorry?" I asked, taken aback a little. "It's always dark here." The pen fell out of my hand. No one had ever heard this person talk. It was always just heavy breathing for a couple of minutes before they hung up. Had they been waiting for something? I wondered for a moment if they'd talked before and maybe no one had told me. Was I the first one they'd ever talked to? "It's always dark here," they repeated, and this time I stopped thinking and started listening. "Where are you?" I asked, not sure what else to say. "The rain is so loud tonight." The voice was neither male or female and sounded low and growly, like someone getting over a cold. "Look, I'm not sure who you are, but you've called a hospital. If you need some help, I'll be happy to help you, but otherwise, I need to—" "Cherish says hi," the voice whispered. That made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I had a sister named Cherish. She was about 12, and as far as I knew, she was asleep at my parents' house. I shook off my fear and began to become a little angry. Whoever this was, they were obviously having a laugh on my account, and it really wasn't funny. "Who is this? Roger, is this you? I swear to God, I'm going to HR if this is you. This isn't even a little bit funny. You need to stop." That's when the line went dead. I held the phone against my ear for a few more seconds before putting it in the cradle and looking around nervously. I expected Roger or maybe Jordan to pop out of the break room with their cell phone, laughing because they'd spooked me. All the company I got, though, was the sound of the air conditioner cycling overhead. I sat for a few more minutes, drumming my fingers, trying to forget the call. The more I thought about it, the weirder it got, though. My coworkers would have called back to make fun of me if this was a prank. If it wasn't them, then some stranger on the phone had called up and said my sister's name. Coincidence or not, I needed to be sure. My mom picked up on the fourth ring, and I could hear Dad grumbling in the background. "Hello? Mom, hey, sorry, is Cherish okay? I know that's a weird question, but..." I could hear her sitting up in bed. "Are you okay? You sound upset. Just please, answer me, Mom. Is Cherish okay?" I don't know, hun. She's at sleepaway camp this week." My blood ran cold. "I need you to call down there and make sure she's okay." What's all this about?" she said groggily. I got a weird phone call a minute ago, and now I have to make sure she's okay." My phone rang, and I looked at the number. Unknown name, unknown number. It couldn't be them again. "Mom, I need to call you back. Just promise me that you'll call the camp and make sure she's okay." Mom said she would, and I hung up and picked up the incoming call. I was immediately bombarded by the sound of rain on glass and muffled heavy breathing. The caller's voice sounded watery, slurry, like they'd recently choked on some water. They sounded like someone with a sore throat or a bad case of pneumonia. Like a drowned person. "Hello? Hello? Who is this?" "Cherish needs your help." I gritted my teeth and tried not to scream into the phone. "Whoever this is, you need to stop. I'm not amused. You're not funny. I want you to..." "He's gone to get her. She thinks he's her friend, but he isn't. He wants to hurt her. You have to stop him." "Who's gone to get her?" "The woodsman. He's a bad man. He wants your sister." I didn't have the slightest idea who this person was talking about, but whatever their game was, I was starting to get freaked out. "Look, this isn't funny. If this is a joke or something, it's really gone to..." The line went dead then, and I was left with static. I spent the next hour in a fitful state. I didn't want to call Mom back and bother her with this, but what if whoever that wasn't kidding around? Surely my sister wasn't stupid enough to just go off with someone into the woods, right? I didn't know, and that lack of knowledge made me nervous. I began to feel the walls of the basement closing in on me, and the claustrophobic feeling made me shake. When the phone rang again, I caught it on the first ring without even really looking. "Hello?" I could hear the quaver in my voice. The rain was softer now, but the voice was no less intrusive. He has her!" It all but screamed at me, and I thought I could hear someone in the background crying and screaming just under that husky rasp. "He's hurting her! Please, hurry! Where are you?" I screamed at them, leaning forward as though I could fall into the computer screen. "Where has he taken her? If this was a prank, I was buying it, hook, line, and sinker." I could hear someone, a small girl it sounded like, screaming and crying as someone did God knew what to her. My cell phone roared to life. I looked down to see it was Mom and picked it up without thinking. Mom was hysterical on the other end. She and Dad were in the car, driving up to the camp. The counselors had gone to check on Cherish and found her bed empty. What's more, they found muddy boot tracks going into her cabin and then leaving out the other way. They can't seem to track them. The rain here, it's been torrential. The state police are bringing in the tracking dogs, and they're going to start as soon as they can. "She's in the woods, Mom. Someone has her," I sputtered out, still hearing the screams on the phone. Mom was silent for a few breaths. "How do you know that?" "I've got a caller on the phone who says she's alive, but it sounds like he's hurting her. They're in the woods, Mom. Tell them to search the woods." She hung up on me, and when I picked up the phone, it had gone dead again. I sat in the silence and felt utterly impotent. Should I leave and go help them look? My job wasn't really the thing holding me there. I was sure people would understand if I abandoned my post, but I was hoping that the mystery caller would give me more information. Every second counted now. If my information would help them find my sister a little quicker, then all the better. I muddled through a few late-night calls while I waited, and I'm sure the people on the other end could tell I was tense. After an hour, Mom called to let me know that they'd arrived at the camp. The rain had made it very difficult for the dogs to find a trail, but they'd started searching the woods anyway. The police were confident they could locate her, but Mom wasn't so sure. She sounded scared and tired and just plain defeated. When she hung up, I stared at the phone on my desk and willed the mystery caller to call again. They'd been so chatty before. Why had they gone silent now? I pulled up call logs on my computer then and started trying to find the number. No name, no number was all I ever got. I know in movies the police can easily decode these private numbers, but I work for a hospital and not even the emergency part of the hospital. My resources were limited to what I could do on my out-of-date computer. When the phone rang 20 minutes later, I looked at the number and almost knocked it off the desk in my haste. No name, no number. "Hello? Hello? Where are you? I need you to—" "He's killing her! He's trying to make it last, but he's killing her!" The voice whispered harshly. "Where are you? The police are looking for her, but I need to know where you are." The voice was silent for a moment, and I thought I'd lost them again. On the other end, I could hear whimpers, and the person making those noises sounded broken. Hot tears ran down my face as I listened to what could be my sister's final moments. I began to beg the voice to tell me where they were. I lay my hands against the desk and cried, letting the tears flow as the voice seemed to contemplate how to answer me. "When I played here, it was about a mile from the camp, over a creek, past the blackberry fields, and up a little hill. His house is at the top of that hill. I've been here for so long, though. I don't know if any of those things are still here. Please hurry. She doesn't have much longer." Then the line went dead. I called my mom and gave her the information. When she relayed it to the counselor, they knew exactly where she was talking about. The house belonged to the groundskeeper, and he had lived there for quite a long time. She said the police were on their way now to check it out, and she asked me to thank the person on the phone if they called back. I waited for an hour, another long and agonizing hour, and when my cell phone rang, the number made my skin crawl. Unknown name, unknown caller. Were they calling my cell phone this time? That seemed unlikely, and when I picked it up, I was greeted not by the raspy voice of the sick child, but by the stony voice of Officer Darraway from the state police. He told me they'd found Cherish and the groundskeeper in his cabin. "She ain't in a good way. The bastard used the time he had to do some pretty upsetting things. She's alive, and we're sending her on the next flight to the nearest hospital. That's the one you work at, I believe." I thanked him and told him to tell my parents that I'd be waiting for her when she got here. "Your mama tells me you've been in contact with another child, and they gave you directions to find your sister." "Yes, she just called me out of the blue. I don't even know how she got my number." He was silent for a moment. You'll forgive me for saying so, but that seems highly unlikely." "How do you mean?" I said, startled. "The groundskeeper didn't have a phone in his cabin. His cell phone was on his person when we recovered him, and there's no other child in that cabin." That's impossible. They said they'd been there for a very long time. They've been calling for weeks." "Look, I appreciate you helping us find your sister, but this whole story seems very far-fetched. That being said, I don't think we'd have found your sister without your help. I want to take a statement from you when I get there, but just know we don't consider you in any way connected to this, despite the oddness of your claim." I thanked him, and he thanked me before hanging up. I was getting ready to call Marta, the 6 a.m. person, so she could come in a little early to relieve me, when a familiar caller popped up on my screen. No name, no number. I picked it up as I prepared to thank the caller for their help. I had just started thanking them when I heard the heavy breathing on the other end, and stopped. The sound was completely different. The caller had a husky tone to his breath, and you could clearly hear their breathing jagged up and down as they went about whatever they were doing. This was no child's breathing. This was an adult, and I hung up the call before I could think too much about it. I sat there in a daze as I pulled the call log towards me. I logged the heavy breather, but thought for a moment about recording the other caller too. They had saved my sister's life, whoever they had been, and I decided not to add them to the log. I called Marta and told her what had happened. She agreed to come in for me and said she'd see me soon before hanging up. I'm sitting with my sister in the ICU as I write this, but I can't help but wonder who that mysterious caller was. How did they call me? How did they know where to find me? My sister is heavily sedated right now, but I'm a little afraid of what she might tell me when she comes to. Does she know the girl who called me? Did she tell her how to contact me? I'm afraid to go back to work now. I'm afraid of who else might call me when I again man that desk. What other lost souls might be just a phone call away. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Seems we've been having quite a few hospital stories lately. I hope you've been enjoying the transition from prison to hospital. It's definitely a different environment, but somehow just as dark. Let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle and Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. Thanks to Xaronana for being our Ghost Reader tier contributor. And thanks to Glen Jenkins for being our Ghost Rider tier contributor. Thanks, guys. I hope you're enjoying those Tuesday, Thursday videos a day early. If getting your spooky videos a day early sounds like too good a deal to pass up, then why not come on down to Patreon? For just $5 a month, you too can get your videos on Tuesday and Thursday a day early, and have your name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I do. I've also got a new book coming out in July. You won't want to miss that. Don't forget to add Dark Journeys to your collection. I'm also working on something a little special for Christmas that I think you'll like, and you certainly won't want to miss that. So, keep your eyes peeled this November for a little something in time for the Christmas season. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.